Hey everyone! I hope y'all are doing okay in these crazy times. The past few weeks have been interesting, to say the least. My last video got such an amazing response, which made me happy because I was kind of expecting some dislikes due to the controversial nature of the topic. But thank you all so much for your wonderful and thoughtful comments. After I posted that video, I went on a ski trip with my boyfriend, and this is about around the time that I started taking the coronavirus more seriously. I hadn't really been too concerned about it before that. Like, when I first heard about it months ago, I totally brushed it off. And then a few people made videos about it. Mike the Vegan made a couple great videos about it. And it just wasn't at the forefront of my mind still. I kind of brushed it off like just another outbreak, like the swine flu or whatever. And then a few of my coworkers a couple weeks ago were taking it pretty seriously. And it's not that I thought they were silly or overreacting, it's just that I wasn't on their level yet because I wasn't following the situation closely. But last weekend on this ski trip, my boyfriend's coworkers started talking about it, and it kind of hit me like, damn, this is getting pretty serious. Still though, I wasn't too worried about it. Or so I thought, because that weekend I had several episodes of intense anxiety and nausea. A fun fact about me is that my anxiety typically manifests physically, so in my head I don't realize why I'm anxious, like I haven't conceptualized it yet, but my body is just like, ah! I'm able to catch like irrational thoughts and avoid spiraling mentally, but this doesn't translate to having my body relax. I had no appetite and I was super tense, especially in my neck. On the last day, I was so anxious. I was literally anxious for 7 hours straight. It was not a good time. Eventually, my body calmed down, and that night I decided to just take a whole week off work and get my mental health in check, because clearly I was losing my shit. I chalked it up to being overworked and depressed by how this election is going. Fortunately, my boss was super understanding, and this was last Wednesday, so fast forward to Friday, 2 days into my little staycation, and Denver reaches Tier 2 for the coronavirus, which means our office is shut down until further notice, due to the nature of canvassing, which is literally the opposite of social distancing. I didn't think that my anxiety had anything to do with the coronavirus, but now that I've thought about it, I think that being so plugged into social media, it subconsciously played a role. Like, I felt this collective panicky energy. I also decided to take time off social media and really limit my media consumption in general. Cliche, I know. And as far as self-care goes, I've been running and hiking and meditating, doing yoga, taking CBD, just all the healthy things. I generally eat well and exercise and stuff, but I've been on my A game. I even made a therapy appointment. Go me. So I'm doing a lot better. Oh, and I've been watching Drake and Josh, which Ethan made fun of me at first for laughing so hard at a children's show, but now I've got him hooked on watching it with me. Wow, such a good time. Such a throwback. Anyways, I share all of this because I know someone out there can relate. Apparently anxiety has just spiked since this pandemic, so we're not alone. I also want to say that I'm incredibly lucky to have paid time off and free mental health services. I've got savings and I'm not worried about how I'm going to pay rent. But there are so many people in this country and all over the world taking a real hit. I know it's a privilege to be able to tune out and take an extended self-care staycation, okay? But you can't pour from an empty cup, and compassion fatigue is a real thing. I'm hesitant to celebrate having all this time off to read books and chill out because I know so many people are suffering and dying as a result of this. But I realized that I don't have to suffer on top of that because it really doesn't help anyone. Despite the fact that I've been limiting my media consumption, I still have a lot to say about this whole situation. It really highlights our broken economic system and broken healthcare system. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of faith that we're gonna learn our lesson. Biden brought up Italy in the last debate, arguing that they have a single-payer healthcare system, yet the situation is still out of control. Well, yes, but the problem is that they acted too late and the system was overwhelmed. There are multiple layers to disaster preparedness. But having a single-payer healthcare system would certainly lessen the blow because people wouldn't be avoiding getting tested or treated out of fear of cost. Regardless of how good a country's healthcare system ranks, prevention is key. It's still possible for a pandemic to overtax the best healthcare system in the world if preventative measures like travel bans and social distancing aren't taken. And when hospitals are full, a lot of people are going to die, not just from the coronavirus, but from the lack of availability of hospital beds. There's a reason that health experts are shouting from the rooftops that we need to flatten the curve. The economic repercussions of this are almost as disastrous as the virus itself. The stock market is tanking. There are so many people in the service industry that won't be able to pay rent if they don't get paid. More than half the country lives paycheck to paycheck, and we don't even have mandatory paid sick leave. That is insane. Whole Foods suggested that their employees donate their paid time off to their sick coworkers. Like, excuse me, what? I work for an independent nonprofit, and we're dipping into our emergency fund so that we can pay our employees. Jeff Bezos could pay all of his employees thousands of times over. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is throwing trillions of dollars at the stock market, and what do you know? It's not helping at all. I think the most sensible policy, especially during a crisis like this, is UBI. But since we're run by a bunch of moronic oligarchs, that's probably not going to happen. Back to my personal evolution of concern regarding the coronavirus, because this is relevant. I was living in denial for weeks, not really paying attention. But after my office shut down and schools started closing, and concerts and large events got canceled, my cousin postponed her wedding, I was like, oh shit, this is serious. Yet somehow there are still people out there not taking it seriously, just going about their normal lives and completely ignoring pleas from the CDC to stay home. A few weeks ago, I was naive and made jokes about taking advantage of cheap flights. But that was long before gyms and yoga studios and hair salons and restaurants started closing. Like, maybe don't get on an airplane. Not every state was taking the same precautions as Colorado at the time, so I saw a bunch of people that were still traveling, some out of the country, and going to large social gatherings, eating out. Like, what are you doing? The primaries are still happening. People are making light of the situation, saying it's all hype or a freaking hoax. Like, Jesus fucking Christ, you're putting vulnerable people at risk of dying. Selfishness, entitlement, ableism, not to mention racism, are on full display. You may be healthy and able to fight off the virus, but you could still be unknowingly spreading it around everywhere you go. So freaking stay home. You can still go outside, just avoid large crowds of people. The ableism is the most glaring because people hear that if you're young and healthy, you probably just have mild symptoms, so they don't even bother listening to the CDC guidelines. Stop thinking about just yourself. My sister's husband, for example, is young and healthy. He's vegan, he's never smoked a day in his life, but he's always had asthma, and it's pretty bad. Like, his lungs work at 70% the capacity of normal, healthy lungs. So if he were to get this virus, it could potentially be very serious. I've heard people say that they're not going to let fear stop them from living their lives, so they're not going to cancel their travel plans. Psh. But this misses the point entirely. If you're young and healthy, you're probably going to be fine, so you shouldn't cancel your vacation plans out of fear, but out of compassion for other people. I could go on a whole rant about how people feel so entitled to travel the world. I get that traveling is cool and all. Like, I definitely plan to do a modest amount of traveling in my life. I did fly to Hawaii last year, and I also chose to move thousands of miles away from home. So perhaps my idea of a modest amount of traveling is relative. But all I'm saying is that people have this obsession with traveling without considering the environmental costs, and at a certain point it becomes excessive. Like, you could visit just as many new and exciting places within a closer vicinity to where you live. Yet people feel the need to just travel all over the friggin' planet. I'm like, we have mountains over here too. I feel like I'm gonna get called out in the future for my life choices. I'm probably a hypocrite. But my main point is that now is not the time to travel. This whole situation has got me thinking, like, damn, this crisis is unfolding very rapidly. And unfortunately, due to misinformation and denial, we've acted too late. Had we taken action months ago, we could have nipped this shit in the bud. The scientists were ringing the alarms back in January, and even before that, yet people weren't taking it seriously. And now it's too little too late, and the consequences will be far greater because of our stupidity and carelessness. This is the climate crisis, but on a micro scale. We are already experiencing the devastating effects of climate change. They're not quite serious enough yet for privileged Americans to snap out of their denial. Once we get to that point, it'll be far too late, and millions more people will suffer as a result. Had we taken action decades ago when climate scientists were first ringing the alarms, we could have prevented catastrophic damage to our planet. Ethan always tells me that I think too highly of humanity, and we're all just a bunch of dumb primates driven by selfish desires, so I should really lower my expectations. Because all the sages say that expectations lead to disappointment. This is not to say that we shouldn't try to change people's beliefs and behaviors and hold people to a higher standard, but that we shouldn't be surprised when people are stubborn and resistant to change. What's happening right now shouldn't be a surprise. Disasters like this are an inevitability, given how we've manipulated and destroyed the natural world. And the severity of the issue really highlights the flaws in our system and our lack of preparedness. So yeah, humanity is doomed, but it's still noble and good to fight for change. And although we may be acting way too late, the consequences would be monumentally worse if we failed to act at all. It's also interesting how partisan this issue is. Like, my sister was talking to my grandma, and she seemed totally unconcerned, like wasn't staying inside, going out. And it was revealed that she had just talked to my super conservative uncle, and a light bulb went off in my sister's head, and she was like, oh no. Fortunately, my grandma isn't really affiliated with either political party, so she was able to listen to reason, and she's now staying in and following proper guidelines. Trump downplayed the situation for so long, and people trusted him. But now he's claiming that he knew it was a problem all along. Complete lies. This is what happens. If you study history, you'll start to see a pattern. We all know the quote, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. But then they pretend that they were with you all along. Conservatives today love and praise Martin Luther King, but conservatives during his time loathed him and fought against him. Eventually, when shit really starts to hit the fan with climate change, conservatives will come around. But they'll act like they cared about the environment all along. It's really unfortunate that it takes too long for people to see things clearly. Hindsight is 20/20. There's so much more I could say about this, like the connection between pandemics and meat consumption. Earthling Ed made a really great video about this. And of course, the racism towards Chinese people, Americans thinking they're fucking invincible. It's all really sad. Anyway, I think I'm gonna stop here, so let me know how you're coping with all of this. I'm very sorry if you're struggling. You're definitely not alone. And if you're personally benefiting from all this unexpected time off, like I am, just try to enjoy your life and feel gratitude rather than guilt. Take this time to recharge all your batteries, because we got work to do. I know this is a serious crisis, and of course I wish it weren't ravishing the world. But it is kind of nice that many of us have this time to slow down and do some introspection and breathe in fresh air because emissions are dropping. And rich people are freaking out and losing money, and even supporting socialist policies in an attempt to mitigate this, which is entertaining at least. Obviously, the pros do not outweigh the cons because the poor and the middle class will suffer the most. But I digress. Thank you so much for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up and leave a comment down below. What have you been up to? What books are you reading? Let me know. All right, take care.
Yo, how when me eat, them I wonder when me eat. When me tell them say me no eat no fish, no meat now. How when me eat, them I wonder when me yam. When me tell them say that I'm a vegan, man. How when me eat, them I wonder when me eat. When me tell them say me no eat no fish, no meat now.